Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 53rd episode of Crime Over Wine, the only podcast with head-scratching true crime stories that are just better over a bottle of wine. I'm your host, Liam Collins, and this week, my guest co-host is a journalist, Chattanoogan, and just all around, like, one of the most joyous ladies I've ever met in my life. My guest co-host this week is Andy Santoro. Hello, Andy. So good to see you.
Good to see you. What a sweet welcome. Thank you.
Only for you, Andy. Only for you. And so Andy and I first met a couple years ago. I think we were both like bottom of the barrel reporters. I feel like, well, not you. You've been around for a while in Chattanooga, and now Andy's like the host of her own freaking show. So you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
It's a lifestyle show. It's much easier and happier than journalism.
So true.
Definitely not as exciting though, but it's happy. Yeah. I'm in, the safe, dry weather inside. Right. But I love it. And look at you with your own podcast. I'm so proud of you.
We're all doing great things.
I love everything about it, Liam. Like I told you, the graphic design of it, the format, everything. Good job.
Thanks. Keep going. We love it. Andy, love you so much. Let's drink wine together. We've never drank wine together, so let's drink wine together. All right, excellent. Well, this week we are drinking Simple Life's Pinot Noir. It's softly balanced with bright fruit and warm spice flavors, opening with Bing cherry, thimbleberry, and vanilla pomegranate aromas, leading to baked cherries, raspberries, and subtle notes of cinnamon and nutmeg on the palate. A lot of different flavors going on in there. I am like bing, 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 like all across the spectrum. So I'm very curious to see what this one's going to taste like.
Here we go.
Yeah, and I know, so when I dropped off the wine to you, Andy, you specifically said that you love Pinot Noirs. Is that typically your go-to kind of wine?
Pinot and Cabernet. I think I'll like this one because it sounds a little darker with the nutmeg and cinnamon. I don't love a real fruity sweet drink.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah,
and it's definitely darker than a Pinot Noir typically is. Barely. It's still pretty light though. There's definitely it's a very strong purpley red flavor
darker
color in there. Yeah. So I'm gonna venture a guess that this is probably a bit of it's definitely a darker flavor, but I'm gonna go for a lot of different fruit flavors in there too, all at the same time, just based on based purely on the color.
And the stuff you said was very fall winter like. So I don't know if it's a winter wine, if there's
it has to be, I'm sure. I mean, with nutmeg, cinnamon, pomegranate, like that has to be, I'm sure, like just one of those wines that you just like curl up next to the fireplace on like a cool winter evening.
Or your favorite murder podcast.
Oh, right. Or with your favorite murder podcast, just like a thought. So excellent. Well, cheers to you, Andy. Thank you so much for coming
Liam.
on. So good to see you. Bold flavors. I'm trying to pick out what those flavors are. I'm definitely getting pomegranate for sure.
Yes, that's very strong. That's the strongest. Very strong.
Yeah, and raspberries in there too. Cherries a little bit. I'm not so much getting cinnamon and nutmeg, like not so much spicy flavors. Maybe a little bit in the back.
Yes,
I feel like I get that a touch.
You're so good, Liam.
Well, I've done this once or twice.
Because when you say it, it helps to. When you say it, then I can understand. I'm like, yes, that's right.
Well, that's what I tried to do. Is right. So we have the script open like right in front of us, and we we'll go through like each of those flavors and like take a sip and see if I can get that. And it does help to kind of like focus in. I'm like, okay, am I getting pomegranate in here? And like definitely pomegranate for sure.
That's so interesting. And I had that. It has a vanilla aftertaste.
Vanilla. Yeah, you're right about that. Yep. And you know what? It opens up like vanilla in the back. You're right. Well, speaking of like inspiring stories, I am pretty inspired by the characters in the story that I'm going to tell you about this week, Andy. And I have a feeling as I was writing this, I was like, Andy's going to have a lot to say here because I know you're a mom of two boys, right?
Yes, two boys.
And so this involves, a parent situation and a really unfortunate, something really unfortunate that happened to one of their kids. And so I want you to brace yourself a little bit here, but we're going to get through this one together. So this week, Andy, I would like to tell you the story about the freezing temperatures of British Columbia, Canada. When a vibrant young man with everything working for him seems to vanish without a trace, what seems like an entire country starts searching for him. This week, I want to tell you the story of Ryan Shtuka and the cold Canadian night. 20-year-old Ryan Shtuka was everything to his parents, Heather and Scott. He was their firstborn child, and Andy, as a mom, I know you can relate to that kind of, really unique connection, but, speaking as the youngest child myself, I feel like I should note here that doesn't necessarily mean better or worse, right? It just is a little unique, different than the other ones, right?
Yeah, it's very unique. It was just me and my son his first 3 years. And now that he's away at college, it's me, the youngest, the next 3 years. But yeah, my youngest has never had me alone, but that bond with your first is very, very special.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ryan had 2 younger sisters and a dog that was his whole world. His parents shared with the documentary Peaks and Valleys, the search for Ryan Shtuka, that the dog was absolutely obsessed with Ryan. And when Ryan was gone, the dog would stay alert looking for him, looking out the window, and would know when he came home. Ryan was a very social guy. He loved hanging out with his friends and loved anything that meant having just a really good time. But he was also really hardworking, really responsible too. And to him, snowboarding was one of the best times that you could have. So in the fall of 2017, Ryan ended up approaching his parents about spending his winter break in Sun Peaks, British Columbia, which was about 9 hours away from their home in Beaumont, Alberta. Ryan wanted to work as a lift operator at the ski resort. His parents tell the Peaks and Valley documentary that when Ryan approached them with this idea, they could tell he was nervous to ask and wasn't really sure how they were going to respond to it. But Heather and Scott were all about it. Ryan, again, was a really good kid and they wanted him to enjoy his winter break. You're only young once, right? And while they were really supportive of the trip, they fully expected him to come home, of course, either at the end of the trip, but maybe more likely, according to them, a little bit early once he inevitably got a little homesick. But Ryan left on December 1st, 2017, and he was texting his parents regularly all the way up until right before Christmas when Heather and Scott were trying to arrange him coming home for the holiday. But Ryan said he was having a great time at the resort and he wanted to stay with his friends for the holiday. Heather and Scott were surprised and a little upset by his decision since this would be the family's first holiday without him since he was born. But they were okay with his decision. Again, they trusted him and they wanted him to enjoy every single second of the trip. So they saved his Christmas presents for him to open when he returned, and the holidays felt just a little bit emptier, of course. And again, they were kind of caught off guard by how much he was enjoying the trip. They couldn't really tell if it was because they expected him to get homesick or if it was just because they really, really wanted him to.
I can totally understand that with an oldest child. Like, you don't, what are they thinking? Right. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, and you like a feeling you've never experienced before, right? Like sending, your child's like being 9 hours away from you, right? And and just being like living on his own, and just like being his own like person like that. Like if it was like the middle or the youngest child that wanted to do this, like maybe you've like been there, done that, but this is not the case, right?
Right. It's interesting. Now I am literally reading this live with you. Like I have no idea where this is going, but I wonder if there is foreshadowing here to how little they can. I'm not going to say they communicate little, because young men, teenagers, young adults, they're not great communicators. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if they were caught off guard how he felt. They didn't know that they were this was unexpected, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and again, I don't necessarily know if that was like based off of anything that like Ryan said to them or like how Ryan interacted. Maybe like I kind of got the vibe that it was more so because like this was like they were being very introspective here, and like acknowledging that like they probably just wanted that feeling from him.
Right.
They wanted him to like want to come home. Of course, any parent like there's like that like torn feeling, I'm sure, right?
Yes,
of like I want you to go off and enjoy and live your life, but I also kind of want you home. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting.
Oh, I can so relate to that.
Yeah. But again, so but to be clear, like when I say like they were texting, that he was texting them all the time, like he was texting them all the time saying like, I'm having a great time. Everything's fantastic. I'm doing this. I'm going to work. Like work was fine today. And so they were very much so in direct communication with him. And so like they knew what he was doing on a regular basis. Like it wasn't just like one of these situations where it was like, okay, go off, like we'll see you in 3 months kind of thing,
Right.
But, again, Ryan was having a really great time at his trip, and he was texting his parents practically every single day, multiple times a day. On February 16th, 2018, Ryan and his roommates had plans to go out again, as they had been doing multiple nights since they got to the resort. Ryan had worked a full day that day, and when he got home, he got ready to go to a local bar with his friends for a silent disco party. After a few hours, they left the pub and headed to a house party that was being held really close to their house. And Andy, really close doesn't even really begin to describe it here. And I'm going to send you an aerial shot of the neighborhood so you can get a good juxtaposition, because it's going to be important a little bit later on. So I want you to see it.
Here we go. Oh, cool. Party house. Ryan's house is in the woods. Okay. And this is his ski lodge house. This isn't his family home.
Yes, correct. So this is the house that he is renting, I'm presuming, as he's living living and working at this resort.
Yeah.
But kind of notable, right? Like, it's tucked away, packs everything, and then you'll see like the party house where they got invited to this party was is like on the other side of the wooded area, like in like a very residential, jam-packed, lots of houses, like very populated area clearly, but like his house tucked away, nothing really there.
Right.
So point being, so I think like important to note here, I think there's just kind of, I wanted you to kind of get like a good feel for kind of like the neighborhood that we're talking about here for sure.
Yeah.
So, Ryan and his friends got to the party during the early morning hours of February 17th, and they all arrived together. Everything was great. And around 2 a.m, the friends decided that they were going to head home. And this is kind of a complicated series of events here, Andy, but they're very, very important. So everyone just listen carefully and stay with me here. The roommates apparently physically leave the house one at a time. So one at a time, they get their coats on, put their shoes on, and head out the door to walk home. So one friend gets ready and walks out the door, and then the next. And they all apparently caught up with each other once outside, but Ryan was last to leave. And once they head out the door and the group gets back together and turn around, Ryan was nowhere to be seen. Crime Over Wine is sponsored by BetterHelp. As someone who's used therapy for years, I know that finding a therapist can sometimes be a stress on its own, juggling your full-time job, your family, your friends, your podcast, and trying to find the right therapist on top of that can almost feel impossible. That's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp matches you with a therapist that works for you on your terms. It's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to one of 33,000 licensed professional therapists in as little as a few days. And because finding a new therapist is a lot like finding a new bottle of wine, if you don't jive with your therapist, you can easily switch to a new one at no additional cost. You can get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp by going to BetterHelp.com/crimeoverwine. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/crimeoverwine for 10% off your first month. Join over 4 million people who decided to get help and get happy with BetterHelp. The friends said they had assumed Ryan was just hanging back, lagging behind, a little under the influence, and was probably just taking a little longer to put his shoes on than everyone else was. But look, in British Columbia in February, it is like freezing cold. I saw some reports that it was negative 26 degrees Celsius that night, or about negative 14 degrees Fahrenheit. So they keep walking, again, assuming Ryan was going to be right behind them, and it was a 5-minute walk home, no big deal. Ryan would surely be able to figure this out on his own, and he probably had many times before since he moved to Sun Peaks.
Very, very cold.
Oh, freezing cold. Like that cannot be healthy temperatures in any way, shape, or form, but like I guess if you're in Canada, you're kind of used to it, I'm assuming.
And British Columbia is rocky too. Like it's mountainous. Obviously, mountain. They're at a ski resort.
Right.
In that picture, you can't really tell the topography. So
yeah, I'm getting that it's pretty flat. Like there's clearly a what appears to be either like a line of rocks or
exactly
even a frozen little stream area. I don't know if you can kind of tell the difference, but it does. I can't tell which one it is, but it definitely looks to be like it could possibly be a frozen stream.
Sure. I mean, it's not a flat field. To his house.
Definitely not. There's probably at least a hit, like a semi decent hill or a decently sloped hill.
Right, wooded, rocky stream.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, like, again, so I have to say, and again, like, listen, like, pausing here, right? Like, we've talked about this so many times on this podcast, and it reminds me of the Kanika Jenkins case that we covered back on episode 34 of this podcast. But, like, just a reminder to everyone out there, right? Like, if, like do not, like, if you're going out with friends, like, do not leave your friend behind in any way and under any circumstances. Strongly, am going to insert that here because bad things happen, right? And, like, spoiler alert, like, this is a crime podcast, bad things happened. And so point being is, like, like, if you're going to go out, like, you have to make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people that you trust and who's looking out for your best interest and whose best interest you are also looking out for. Like, if you're putting yourself in a position to, like, be under the influence of whatever you're being under the influence of, like, make sure that you are with people who you trust 100% and are, at the very least going to wait for you to put your shoes on. So
that's right. I mean, it's 2-3 in the morning and minus 14 outside, no matter what. I don't want to be, drunk and walking home alone in the woods minus 14.
Yeah, no, certainly not. Definitely not. Well, the next morning, Ryan still wasn't around, but according to the Peaks and Valleys documentary, it was really common for people working and or living at the resort to just crash on people's couches if they knew them, which makes sense, a good amount of sense to me, right? And, like, these are all young people, living their best lives. And so his roommates assumed that morning that he had either done that or maybe gone home with a girl, no biggie. But what was definitely not normal for Ryan was just, like, not showing up to his job. So later in the afternoon, on February 17th, when Ryan was a no-call, no-show at work, his roommates decided that it was time for them to call police and officially report Ryan missing.
Must be very out of character,
right?
That they did it that quickly.
That quickly, yeah. Oh, less than 24 hours had passed, and, like, again, to the police's credit, like, they took it right away. Would have been really easy for them to be like, oh, he must be hungover, whatever.
Right.
We'll come back to it later. But no, they
took 12 hours later.
Oh,
when you think about it, they did it in the afternoon.
Right.
He must just be a cheerful guy with all the vibes, and he never showed up. Where is he? Right.
Well, and exactly. And if you, and it's like, this seems to be the kind of kid that's like, I'm going to go, I'm not going here to party. Like, I'm going here to, like, sure, have a good time. But, like, also, like, I need to make a living somehow. And, like, if I want to have a good time, like, I need to make a living. And so, like, work is really important. And so, like, someone like that, definitely, like, no call, no show, not going to happen. Like me, like, I am definitely not the no call, no show kind of guy. Right. And so, like, if I am not at work, like, come looking for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
did they call his parents?
Oh, not right away, actually, Andy. And they were, clearly trying to do their own investigation and come up with a logical explanation before cluing in Heather and Scott. And let's not forget, they were 9 hours away. They couldn't really do much to help, at least not right away, right? And so in the meantime, Ryan's friends were texting and calling people from the party, seeing if they had seen Ryan, looking through security footage even. And when they hadn't seen any sign of Ryan anywhere, they went as far as to call the local hospital as their last resort. But no one had seen Ryan since he left the party the night before. So around 10 that night, the roommates did decide that it was actually time to clue in Heather and Scott. They called them and tell them what had happened to Ryan.
Wow, I cannot wait to hear their reaction. I mean, it's tragic.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I'm going on a trip at the end of the month far away from my boys for 10 days, and I'm already, like, slightly panicking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a hard thing, right, to be that far away, and especially
for 10 days.
Yeah, for 10 days, yeah, and especially, I mean, imagine 3 months, right? And, like, you're
it's crazy.
Yeah, your parents are like, yeah, like, let's do this, like, maybe a little hesitant there of, like, oh, like, do you really want to go? You know what I mean? And, like, it's like
literally.
Hard. And so, and then, to get that kind of call that, like, the worst had happened, like, you must just, I can't even imagine the feelings you're feeling.
I can't imagine either.
Well, Ryan's parents' hearts dropped to their stomach when they heard this news, and as soon as they could, they decided to get into the car and make the impossible 9-hour-long drive to Sun Peaks. In the meantime, investigators were out in droves, searching all around the resort. They had volunteers, canine teams, drones, snowmobiles, and helicopters looking for any trace of Ryan. Heather and Scott were messes driving to Sun Peaks, waiting for that call, sharing the worst news with them. They were just waiting for it. They had to pull over several times because they were just too upset to keep driving. They had assumed that they weren't hearing anything because the investigators just didn't want to share the bad news with them while they were still driving, and so that made things even worse and more upsetting for them. But when they had arrived, what they got was in some ways so much better and in some ways so much worse, Andy, because the investigators didn't have any update to give to them, really. At least none that got them any closer to finding out what had happened to Ryan.
Wow. It's like, what's better, knowing or not knowing?
Right.
I
don't know. What is better? I simply couldn't. I mean, at least if you know, like, the nightmare's over, I guess, kind of, but like a new nightmare begins, right? So I don't know. I simply don't know.
That anxiety makes me want to throw up picturing like your child being missing. That where are they? What's happening to them right now? Right. Like I don't know if I could drive.
No, most certainly not. Most certainly not. But police had been asking people who were at the party what they knew about Ryan's disappearance, and it wasn't much. Pretty much everyone at the party had the same exact story. They saw Ryan at the party and saw him leaving with his roommates, and that was it. No one really knew what his plans were after the party if he wasn't just going to go home with his roommates. Investigators had also been asking the public for security and trail cameras, not only for signs of Ryan, but also of any people or cars in the area the night of the party. But if that returned anything significant, police never ended up sharing that publicly.
I know there's not a lot of detail, but I just want to know how hard they're interviewing the roommates.
Yeah, that's fair. And like, again, everyone's drunk at this point, right? Like, not when the interview's happening, but like at the time of Ryan's disappearance. And so like the lines are kind of blurred, and like also it's kind of at this like weird place of like they had left, everyone else was focused inside, Ryan was in the middle, right? And so it's like, who's really keeping an eye on him? Right. You know what I mean? So it's like, so I don't really know but that's a really good question, right? Because I mean, they're the last people who interacted with him, presumably. And so I do want to know everything that they have to say, like, in detail. But those are like the most dangerous of situations too, right? Because it's like, you're naturally in this place of like, I don't really know what's going on. You know what I mean? Where it's not in like any sinister way. It's just simply like, that's the activity that you're participating in. And so it, like, again, like I have to say, like, surround yourself with people who you trust, surround yourself with people who have your back, and like keep tabs on things, and like know how people can get in contact with you, or like know, like find out where you are. Like, luckily these days we have like all sorts of different ways to like for that to happen. Like this is a time when like things, when like that stuff was like getting to that point, pretty well. But point being is like, it's a tricky line to navigate, because it's like, maybe like, do they have two different, like if you're interviewing two of the roommates and like they have two different stories, do they have two different stories because they are hiding something and like they're trying to figure stuff out? Or do they have two different stories because they were drunk and like they don't know, and they have fuzzy memories, and like this person remembers this thing, but this person doesn't remember that thing. So I don't even know. And frankly, I don't even know enough about this situation to know if they did have multiple stories or if they all have the same story. It seemed as though they had pretty similar stories, because we have a fair amount of detail into how this whole interaction kind of came about. So I feel like the police at this point at least are like trusting the roommates enough.
Right.
But as the search for Ryan seemed to be hitting dead end after dead end, the harsh Canadian winter wasn't making things easier for them. The search was complicated by feet of snow piling on top of the snow that had fallen the night of the party. I even read 20 centimeters, or a little more than half a foot of snow, fell the night of the party alone. And eventually police had decided that they had run out of time. Get ready for that big test with Study.com. Study.com offers learning materials and test prep, even LSAT study prep guides for all of my legal nerds listening. Unfortunately, there aren't any wine study guides, and believe me, I did check. Listeners can get 30% off their first 3 months of any subscription level using the promo code CrimeOverWine. Again, that's promo code CrimeOverWine, no spaces, for 30% off your first 3 months at Study.com. Learn faster, stay motivated, study smarter with our sponsor, Study.com. All right, Andy, how is your wine tasting? This is like a really, like, we're slowly getting into this case. And so I need to know, are you like sipping away, or are you like saving it for the end of this thing?
I'm just really into the story. So I even had to remind myself that we're supposed to be drinking wine and just sort of being chill, but I'm really into this. The wine is very mellow. It really is a perfect sort of, like you said, wrapping up in a blanket. sipping on the wine in front of the fire and enjoying your favorite crime podcast.
Yeah, I think I might have to put the Yule log on the TV after this one to like simulate that. I don't have a fireplace, unfortunately, but that would be great. No, but you're right, because it is giving winter vibes for sure. The like winter flavors, winter feelings, absolutely 100%.
It smells really good too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I'm into it. Are you enjoying the flavors in general? Is anything popping out to you a little bit more than it was at the beginning?
It's a tart wine.
Mm-hmm. It's sharper, and I was just about to say it got sharper in the middle than it did at the beginning.
Yes. It's got a sharp first taste, and then your mouth is like coated with a mellower, softer feeling. But that first zing is almost a little strong.
Yeah, because that you definitely get that heavy fruit flavor in the front for sure.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of like the sharpness that we're feeling. But then, like you said, like you get like that vanilla-y kind of as it goes down for sure. So it does smooth out, which is interesting because I feel like I typically enjoy the opposite. Like I like to have it a little bit smooth, and then for those big flavors to like come out in the back, which is why I like Cabernets. But this, I'm actually really enjoying the combination of flavors here. And I don't usually like Pinot Noirs all that much. Everyone knows I'm a Cabernet girl. And so but I'm really actually quite enjoying the flavor combinations and the experience that this wine is giving, this Pinot Noir.
Yeah, I agree. I love it.
Yeah.
You make this really fun, Liam.
Oh, I do my best. Well, talking about like new directions and stuff, this case is about to take a real sharp left turn, totally new direction. Let's go there.
Oh, let's do it.
Well, with no more leads into Ryan's location and the trails running cold and only being covered with more and more snow, investigators had decided that if Ryan was somewhere in a secluded wooded area, it was likely too late for him. So just 2 days after the search began, they decided to call it off and tell search crews and volunteers to stay home.
Wow. I don't like that. 2 days, only 2 days of searching. I always wonder what determines when you see these mass, like 500 people, search crews walking through the woods and those big lines for days. And this one, they're calling it off after 2 days?
Yeah. Well, and you have to, I feel like it most certainly, has to be one of those situations where it's just a case by case of just hey, the circumstances are pointing to this, the circumstances are pointing to something totally different here. In this situation, more and more snow is piling on. It's negative degrees out there. And so it's unless you have a real definitive, direction to take this thing, the assumption has to be, unless you skip town, and we're going to get to how much ground they covered in a second here. So the point being is if they just happened to miss the spot where he was outdoors and passed out or, fell, hurt, whatever it was, if that's the assumption that they're running on here, he probably froze. Right. And so the point being is why have people out there searching and risking their own lives in this cold weather if the odds are slim they're even going to find to begin with because of the conditions, but on top of the fact that the conditions are likely not playing in his favor at this point.
Well, I'm curious how the family took it, because I kind of know how I would take that news, and I know it's sort of morbid, but I would rather hear that one of my kids died of freezing than murder. So
yeah. Oh gosh, I don't know how I would feel about that. Gosh. Well, yeah, for them though, it was a really hard pill to swallow, as you can imagine, Andy. They seemed to be largely understanding of this decision though, but it didn't stop them from hanging around Sun Peaks to continue looking for clues that would lead them to Ryan. Meanwhile, the typical places you would expect to see on some online activity were blank for Ryan. His bank accounts, social media activity, his cell phone records all showed no activity whatsoever since the night of the party. So as Heather and Scott continued searching for their eldest son with the help of some local volunteers, they really expected that the best luck they would have was when Sun Peak's harsh winter was over. And eventually it did. But the snow melting didn't lead to any more clues to where Ryan could have gone.
Well, what could have happened? I'm trying so hard not to read ahead because I am on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, well, and again, so let's throw out this little teeny tiny little spoiler alert, because I know people get really pissed off when there's no definitive ending to neat bow to this thing. There's no neat bow to this thing. Just to be crystal clear, I'm gonna get you guys to the end of the story. We're gonna have some more details to get through, but we're very much so in a very open ended situation even today. So let me just get rid of that, like, you know, real harsh, like, ending for those people who yell at me. But that being said, there are a lot of theories, right? But, like, point being is, like, we still have a lot of questions, for sure. And so, like, even at this point, we still have a lot of questions. And, you know, Heather and Scott have a lot of questions, too. They ended up staying in Sun Peaks for 3.5 months before they had to go back to Beaumont in June for one of their daughter's 18th birthday, who had been back home pretty much this whole entire time. But Heather and Scott had encouraged volunteers to keep at it in their absence, and they had made some pretty strong connections with the Sun Peaks locals who had been the most active in the search for Ryan. Heather and Scott pledged to return until Ryan was found, and in the months to years to come, they kept that promise. They would live in Beaumont when the snow started to fall, and would live in Sun Peaks, searching every inch of the resort in town when the snow melted.
Oh, that's so sad. They must be a very close family. You just kind of get that. I would stay months.
Yeah. Like, luckily for them, I would imagine anyways, I don't know this for sure, but, like, I'm sure they have, like, the support at home to, like, take care of their daughters.
Oh, 100%.
In Sun Peaks, like, looking for their son. And so luckily, like, this wasn't a problem for them. I can't imagine if they didn't have that support, or, like, you know, like, the kids, you know, like, you know, couldn't come along with them, you know, like, that, how complicated that must have been. And so, like, feels weird to say, but, like, they seem to be pretty lucky in the grand scheme of things, I suppose.
Right. Well, like, they keep saying they're searching the area. I don't understand, because it doesn't look like that huge of an area, house to the house. Right. How much is there to search? Where are they searching?
Yeah. Well, so by this point, they are searching everywhere, Andy. But at first, it was obviously much more centralized to where the party was held. So let's go back to that map, right? Let's pull that back up, if you don't mind, Andy. You know, again, we are going to link to this on our website and in our show notes, too. So this isn't pictured in the photo we're looking at, Andy, but the roads to the houses connect. And so it's pretty clear, based on how the investigators are talking about this case, that Ryan's roommates, you know, likely took the road back to the house to avoid cutting through the woods. And again, this is like a 5-minute walk home, not a big deal. But point being is, like, they didn't take the woods from what they're assuming here. They likely to walk down the street, connect to where it connected, and then walked, you know, back down the street back to the house. But there is also the possibility that they're running off of here, that Ryan may have attempted to take a shortcut through the woods. Now, this isn't just some trees and stuff. This is a pretty intense walk, possibly even over, like, again, we were talking about, like, this frozen stream. But surely it would have been faster than taking the road. Plus, Ryan's adventurous, he's cold, he's a little drunk, and it's not a total stretch that he could have taken the path to get home a little bit faster. So this is the assumption police go down right off the bat when they're using the drones, helicopters, canines, etc. And they search every single inch of these woods in the days after Ryan's disappearance, but they find nothing. And they end up ruling out that theory within just a few days. So they don't seem to not be thinking that Ryan took the shortcut at this point.
Wow. I don't know how they just assumed that so quickly.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, like, right, like, this is, like, there's a clear straight shot, right? And so, like, I'm imagining them saying that, like, unless he just, like, got really disoriented and went the totally wrong way, like, they would probably say, like, odds are, like, he would be in, like, this central location some way, shape, or form. Like, he couldn't have gotten that far, right? And so, so I guess they had at some point just said, there's no way he's in the woods, because we search every inch of the woods, right? And, like, it's not a very large stretch of woods either.
Huge.
So it wouldn't be that hard to search. I would
search that, right?
Yeah.
Huh.
And, like, too, I have to say, too, because there's this other part, too, that there's a pretty significant theory here, that people believe that he still may have gone through the woods, but, like, after he passed away, like, animals may have gotten to him. To be clear, like, police don't think that's true, because, like, most animals, like, there would be, like, some shred of evidence there to, like, you know, to at least point to the fact that he was there at some point. Blood, clothes, shoe, something like that. And so that does not seem to be the theory that they're going with here either.
Wow.
But by the first anniversary of Ryan's disappearance, investigators said that they had found some items in their searches, but they were all determined to have not been tied to Ryan's case at all. And they also say that there was no evidence that Ryan had been met with foul play. But interestingly, in this press conference they hold alongside Heather and Scott, a reporter asks if there was any evidence that Ryan was even still in Sun Peaks, and they said no, and went even further to say that they found no evidence at all.
They're quick to say no to a lot of these theories.
I totally agree with that. And like, again, I think maybe not worded the best way that this investigator said it, but my assumption here is that maybe they're trying to say that like there was no evidence that they found that he was there, like there was no evidence that they found that they had left, like they can't rule either out, like there's zero evidence. Exactly. And so I think that's clearly what they're trying to say here, but again, not very well. So like, I don't know, I feel like they probably could have said like, we are not ruling anything out at this point because we don't have anything to rule anything out, you know what I mean? But as opposed to just saying like is there any evidence that he's still there, and you just saying no.
I mean, Liam, how often, you were a reporter, how often do PIOs have definitive answers like this? They almost never do.
That's such a good point, right? Because they dance around the subject, right?
And
like,
day 3, they're like, he did not die in the woods. You know, day 3, he did not go that way. And it's like, wow, police don't ever communicate like that.
Yeah. And like, again, like, I feel like it's probably a little bit of, because I feel like you get this a lot with like international cases where it's like they are a little bit more like cut and dry, whereas in America, they kind of dance around, and like the press is a little bit of a different animal. And so like they probably, that's probably going through their heads a little, like that's probably playing into this situation a little bit here too. But like, to your point though, you're right. Like they are ruling out a lot of things and like giving very definitive answers for a case where like you literally have nothing.
Well, Liam, I think you're so right though about that. I never thought about that before, international versus American, because we're so litigious, we're so afraid of lawsuits. So I know the police are always afraid to make a statement when investigations open, and you could see internationally them not being afraid. Like it's just not like us.
So true. Yeah, and especially in Canada where like everything's nice and dandy and everything's fantastic. But but you know, by this point the word about Ryan had flown all around town, like a household name at this point in Sun Peaks, and the locals who had become heavily invested in the case of the guy who seemed to vanish into thin air had come up with their own theories about what may have happened to Ryan Shtuka. Crime Over Wine is proud to support Emancipet. Unlike episodes of Crime Over Wine, veterinary care shouldn't be a mystery, which is why Emancipet is making vet care affordable and accessible to everyone. Emancipet is a nonprofit organization that operates an ever-expanding network of low-cost veterinary clinics in neighborhoods across the country, offering discounted and free vaccines, flea and tick treatments, spay and neuter surgeries, and much more. Learn more and support Emancipet's mission at emancipet.org. The first theory about Ryan involves some creative thinking here, I think, to say the least. That theory is that Ryan may have actually left Sun Peaks either voluntarily or involuntarily. Now, take all of that as you may, but to me, that would require some kind of trace of evidence, at least I would think anyways, a trail, video surveillance, you know, of Ryan's belongings, something, but that isn't necessarily the case here. But it would explain why all of these years later, we still haven't found like a thing tied to Ryan or like any sign of Ryan at all.
Well, I'm always curious what they look like, and I just looked them up. Good looking kid, kind of a hippie vibe.
Oh yeah.
You know, you just never know. I again, what we have so far, and let's say this is real time and the police are just so vague. Surely if someone's going to disappear on their own volition and go into hiding or go escape and never, you know, witness protection, whatever, from their family they love so much, there would have been like signs of that coming.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, and he does not seem like listen, I throw out voluntarily like immediately, right? Like there's no way in my mind that like someone like Ryan is going to just like leave everything behind like on no notice, like literally in the middle of the night, like when they're having a good time at a party. You know, like that doesn't make any sense to me at all. But like involuntarily, like okay, like let's go down that path, right? Where like he was alone. So like that makes sense, right? Like if like all of his friends were gone and like he was all there by himself in the snow, like, you know, things were kind of crazy. He might have been taken advantage of. So like that kind of makes a little bit of sense to me. But where I go is like, okay, well then why, like where's the trail? Like where's like the piece of clothing? Like where's anything? And like, I don't know, maybe it's like, again, maybe it's like the snow that's playing into this whole thing, right? Where it's like, it's just like, you know, like covering up like any like sign of that location of a struggle or whatever. Like why weren't there any witnesses? Like it was late, but it wasn't that late. So there's just like a lot of like things like I do feel like that again, like would answer a lot of questions for me, at least from like a theory perspective, but like would leave me with a lot more questions, I think.
Totally.
Yeah. So, the second theory, feels within reason, and we've talked about this already, but I still have some questions about this, Andy, 100%. That theory is that Ryan, again, may have cut through the woods, but maybe like passed out from having too much drugs or too much to drink and froze to death and ended up succumbing to the elements.
That's the most logical thing to me, but the police were so quick to say no, that did not happen, which doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and I would agree with that to a certain extent. The only thing that I would say is where did that happen? If they searched, he couldn't have gotten that far, right? Like, if he was really that messed up,
that's true.
He couldn't have gotten that far. And so it's where did that, again, the house was a 5-minute walk away, and the most extreme path that you could have taken, and if he really took that direct path, I can't even imagine. It was probably a 2-minute walk. And so I don't know, it's where did he go? How did they not find any sign of him at this point, if that's what happened?
Oh, it's so agitating. I have to find out.
Yeah, no, me too. Hopefully soon. But, there's one last theory here, Andy, a final one, that's really interesting. And I just want to be, crystal clear, though, that this is just a theory which seems to be fueled entirely by town rumors. So, take that with a grain of salt. That theory suggests that Ryan may have never actually left the party at all. According to that rumor, Ryan may have overdosed at the party, leading people at the house to panic, and instead of calling for help, they decided to, work together and get rid of his body.
I mean, that's very conceivable.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see that being the situation, but also a bunch of drunk kids, how well could you really get rid of a body without being caught? So, yeah, for sure. But, I don't know. And it's also it's worth noting here, because I saw this theory in an article in that Sun Peaks and Valleys documentary where they interviewed a local reporter for the local newspaper who lived in the town her whole life, and she seemed really adamant that not buying this at all, because it just didn't fit into the town culture, right? It's a happy resort town, and it just she was just I just can't imagine a group of friends, group of people, roommates that knew him better than anybody in the town, doing this and doing this period, but also getting away with it seemed far-fetched to her anyways.
Right. Well, that's to her. I mean, we all have friends that are naive and they're you didn't see that. I totally saw that.
Right. Yeah. And she's not an investigator at all. She's a local news reporter. So,
but didn't they say in the beginning, they interviewed all those kids and they felt none of them, that was another quick write-off they did. No foul play.
That's fair. And again, I have to imagine that they're not not revisiting this at all, right? Because of what is being told to us, but they're probably keeping tabs on all of these possibilities. At least a good investigator would, in my opinion. So I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, but you're right though. But they seem to be okay, believing this a little bit too well for me, for my comfort, in terms of nope, there's he couldn't have gone through the woods because we looked through the woods, it couldn't have been the friends because we asked the friends, you know what I mean? So I don't know. But also listen, I have to say, I've seen this so many times, and only once have I ever been proved wrong from this, and everyone's going to know exactly the case I'm talking about. A group of people, especially a group of young people, can't keep a secret forever. You know what I mean? Right. It's at some point somebody slips up, at some point somebody tells tells the wrong detail that that wasn't part of the plan. So I don't know. I don't listen, I want the crime lover in me, right? Wants this to be the explanation, because at least then we know what happened to Ryan. But the logical side of me just says how does a bunch of kids get away with this for so long?
Well, what's the documentary's vibes with the drugs? Is he a druggie? Is there hard drug use in the documentary?
No, not really. No, not at all.
Just
and this is strictly just what people are assuming may have been happening inside the house. There's nothing definitive. And I don't even really know what drugs they're talking about. My guess is probably worst case scenario, probably some marijuana, that's probably maybe some harder stuff. But Ryan didn't really seem to be that kind of kid that was
you showed up to work on time.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't really know how much he was interacting with that. So So I don't know. I mean, but like also maybe it was like maybe this was the night to be like, yeah, sure. Like I don't have to work until like the afternoon. So like, yeah, sure. Like I'll try this new pill that like people have been asking me to try. Like, sure. I don't know. Total assumptions here.
Hey, stuff has fentanyl in it. One time you're dead, you know?
That's so true. Right. And like, that's how it happens, right? Where it's like you think you can handle this much because like everyone else can handle this much. Right. But like actually like my tolerance is way lower. I just didn't know it.
That's right.
So I don't know, but again, that's totally presumptuous. I feel like we have no evidence to back that up in any way, shape, or form. Like it's probably a safe bet that he was like either drunk or doing some sort of drugs, but like we just don't know.
Right.
Well, you know, to this day, Andy, there has been no sign of Ryan in Sun Peaks. Not a single piece of evidence that has been recovered, and frankly, it feels as though they are no closer to finding him than the day he went missing. Heather and Scott still search through Sun Peaks every chance they get. There have been 3 total organized searches for Ryan, not including the dozens of informal searches by Ryan's family or invested locals. Today, you can find these little plastic green dinosaurs all around the trails in the woods of Sun Peaks with laminated notes attached to them with information about Ryan's case. And that initiative was based on a public statement that Heather made shortly after Ryan's disappearance. And Andy, I'm hoping you can read it for us, but fair warning, it's a doozy.
Sure. So this is what his mom said. Day 3 of searching has come to a close and nothing new to report. And yet so much happened. The police with their dogs came along with a helicopter. Our most precious friends spent the day searching everywhere. Ryan's friends did the same. There's still no sign of him. You must know hope remains, but my heart feels heavier each moment that passes. Night falls and it gets colder and my son is alone. Sometimes I think I can't bear it, so I want to tell you one thing about my firstborn. I want him to be real for you. Oh, I know you know he's loved by his friends and by his family. He's smart and funny. Those are things anyone can say. I want to tell you how much Ryan loved dinosaurs when he was young. Every day he would ask us to play the dinosaur game. We would take turns describing a dinosaur and the other would guess the type. Scott and I started to study paleontology to keep up with Rye. Time passes, and what was once a passion faded. But it's these precious moments that I'm trying so hard to hold on to. So Ryan, if you're out there, let's talk about dinosaurs. Thank you to everyone that has hope and prayers for Ryan. We're so overwhelmed by everyone who's gone above and beyond. You make this uncertainty more bearable. You will never know the depth of our gratitude. Ugh, heartbreaking.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, I got a little choked up, for sure.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you have to, right? Because, like, again, like, as a parent, like, the worst thing ever happens to your kids. And, like, all you can picture, I'm sure, right, is just, like, imagining them when they were, 5 years old, young, innocent, like, doing the most, like, innocent things, right?
Right, and she says, night falls and it gets colder, and my son is alone.
Yeah, that got me. Yeah, that's awful. And like again, like assuming that's really what happened to him. You know what I mean? Like we don't even really know for sure if that's where he is. Like I just can't. Like I can't even fathom. I really just can't.
I think I would be one of those angry parents that's on the, talking to the news and making all the investigators angry because I'm so mad about how slow things are going, and then they're not telling us everything.
Yeah. Well, and to their credit, and to Heather and Scott's credit too, right? Like they've been so patient, and like even they're interviewed in the documentary, and like again, I would be the same way as you. I don't even have kids, right? But like I would be the same way with you. I would be a mess. Like I would be furious, like red in the face. And like they were put together. They, they shared what they needed to say, and didn't cast blame on anybody. And like it would have been so easy for them to do, right? Like who could blame them for like blaming an investigator or blaming one of their roommates or whoever? But like they did not do that. Like they very much so kept it to the point of like my son's out there, people need to find him, and this is what he was like, and this is this is who he is, and we need your help.
Right. While I was reading this and even hearing sort of your passion behind this, Liam, this is a real story, and I can tell you feel like you're advocating for Ryan, even in short, you're keeping it alive.
Yeah, well, and again, that's why that's why I do this podcast, right? We talked about this so many times. Like these are not cases of entertainment for me in any way, shape, or form. They shouldn't be for you. These are we share these stories because they need your attention, right? And so this is a really good example. Again, like if you're in the Sun Peaks area and this is the first time you're hearing about, Ryan Shtuka, like next time you're out and about, like look for that little, like green dinosaur, which by the way, like the whole point of that green dinosaur, the thing that it says on the laminated little note is something along the lines of like, I represent Ryan Shtuka, he went missing on this date. If you see this dinosaur, snap a picture and share it on your social media pages, to like get that word out there. And so point being is like if people are around there, like look for Ryan. Like next time you're just out for a hike, like look for things that are just a little bit out of place. Look for that green dinosaur. Like look for things that can help elevate the story beyond just like, hearing this and forgetting Ryan because like this was such a crazy story and like we're gonna move on from this because like wow, but like now let's do something about it. That's how I see it.
That's really awesome, Liam. And I almost want to apologize for making this sound like a cozy, fun kind of thing when this is serious. It is. Crime podcasts are interesting and are we get carried away in our imagination, but this is real. There's a body out there or a person kidnapped or whatever could have happened, and then a mother sleepless.
And again, I want to reiterate, like you can help find him. Like you can even if it's just sharing this episode to like a friend, like you can help find him, you know what I mean? So well, Ryan was last seen wearing a gray white shirt, a blue coat, dark jeans, and a burgundy ball cap with the logo of the Nor'Wester Athletic Association rugby team on it. He has dirty blonde hair, brown eyes, and is about 6 feet tall and weighs about 180 pounds. If you or anyone you know knows anything about Ryan Shtuka's disappearance, call the Kamloops Royal Canadian Mounted Police at 250-828-3000 or the Crime Stoppers of British Columbia at 1-800-222-8477. There is a $15,000 reward that leads to Ryan's location. Well, that is all that we have for you this week, Andy. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about Ryan and helping elevate his story, because you're part of it too now, whether you like it or not. So
I love it, Liam. I'm honored to have played a role with you and gotten to do this with you. And I'm so proud of you. It's very impressive. You're a pro at this.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm trying my best. Well, tell everyone you do great work on your show, and tell everyone where they can find you and your work online.
Well, we're live at 10 a.m. on News 12, Monday through Thursday, and you can stream us at WDF.com or find me on social media, Andy Santoro TV, on pretty much Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all the things.
Well, thank you again so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And thank you all so much for listening. We are going to put all of our sources on our website so you can read everything for yourself and probably come up with a few theories too. And if you are just loving this podcast and are just looking for a way to tell everyone and anyone about it, the best way to help people discover this podcast is by leaving us a 5-star rating and a review wherever you are listening right now. So make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're wondering what we have in store for you next week, here's a quick sneak peek. Hello, everybody. It's Liam.
And I'm Lori Mitchell. And next week, I'm entering the crime vineyard with a callous case of a brutal attack that took the life of an Iowa Spanish teacher. Why was Noema Graber killed?
You are going to need 2 bottles to wrap your head around this one. And we'll tell you all about it next Wine Wednesday on another episode of Crime Over Wine.
Proud member of the Podnuga Network.